If you are a home barista who is looking for a manual hand crank burr grinder that's going to allow you to cover basically the full range of grind types, going from Turkish all the way up to French press, this is going to be the grinder for you. Now, before I go into the details on the CrushGrind Brazil coffee grinder, I'm just going to let you guys know this is going to be a long video. We spent a lot of time here in the studio getting to know this grinder so that we could give you the proper information. So this is going to be pretty long. If you just want to know the price and you want to know my bottom line on the CrushGrind Brazil coffee grinder, you can jump ahead towards the end of this video. But if you really want to see the nuts and bolts, stick around. This is going to be some good information for you. Hi guys, I'm Brian with FrenchPressCoffee.com. Thank you as always for tuning in here on our YouTube channel. And today we are talking about the CrushGrind Brazil coffee grinder. I did an unboxing of this and I thought it was really cool, and it's time to dive in and talk about adjusting it, using it, and cleaning it. The materials on the CrushGrind are pretty straightforward. It's primarily plastic, however, the burrs for grinding are completely ceramic. Your handle for grinding is metal with a plastic knob on it, and the whole device comes in at weighing at just about 4 pounds. And that is mostly due to the base, which is weighted. And the reason that it's weighted is because this way, when you're grinding, and we'll show you that soon, it's not going to go anywhere. But one of the things that's going to keep it from going anywhere as well is these rubber feet on the bottom, which are literally some of the best I've ever seen, because I can't move this base like at all. Even if I press really hard on it, it doesn't go anywhere. All right, so this is the grinder itself, and it's relatively small. It's really not going to take up a whole lot of space, and let's take it apart. First of all, the handle. This is something that I want to mention to you guys. Just keep this in mind. It doesn't lock on because you're going to do this a lot. You're going to go to flip it over and you're going to drop that handle. Learn from my mistakes, because I did this a lot, honestly. So just learn from my mistakes and make sure, remember, it doesn't lock on. Take off the top to the bean hopper, and you're going to notice that it doesn't screw on. You just press it into place, and it's because it's really well designed with very little clearance between the bean hopper and the lid that goes onto it, so you don't need to screw it on, which is just kind of a cool feature. Then you have the shaft that goes down to your burrs. That's going to turn your burrs, obviously. You're going to attach your handle to here, and you're going to put your beans into the hopper. We'll talk about that in a moment. We found that you can fit about 40 grams of beans in there. Your mileage may vary. Take it apart even further, and we have of course, the grinder itself, and then we have the receptacle where all of your grounds are going to land. Now, important thing to note here, again, no screw-in pieces. This is just kept in with 2 silicone rings, and you just press it together, and it's not going to go anywhere. This won't even turn unless I really start to force it, and that's quite cool. So the design, again, here that I really love is that there's not a bunch of stuff that screws together that could get worn out really heavily over time. Everything just kind of stays together with a little bit of compression. So pretty brilliant design in the long run. Now for the really important part, and that is the grind adjustment and the burrs themselves. We have here in the studio, we've marked what we would call our 0 point for the grinder and the burrs. And this is important because you need to know where 0 is. And we'll get into the usage of this in a minute, but you need to know where 0 is so that you can adjust your grind properly. So we did mark here, this little red mark is not going to be here when you get this, but that little red mark lets us know essentially where we can start and how many turns we can turn in order to know the distance that we're going to be covering in order to cover a certain grind type. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. Let me just take this apart so that I can show this to you guys. And you just need to turn, turn, turn until it comes apart. So this is your adjustment right here. This is what you're going to use for adjusting, and then your burrs are going to come out. And you can see we've used this, and that's because honestly we have to use this in order to know how it works properly. So that's your ceramic burr, one part, and your second part. This is stationary and it's not going to come out, but you should still be able to clean this. And one thing that I want to notice, and you can see this if you look inside of the grinder itself here, you're going to notice that there's these wings that sort of come off of the shaft. And this is a pretty unique thing that I haven't seen really on any other grinder. because that is going to help to push the beans down and into the burrs for grinding. That makes grinding a lot easier because you're just going to force those beans down. So those little wings grab those beans and pull them down. So that's a really, really cool feature. And the last thing that I want to mention here is, this is something that's really important, is that the shaft is spring loaded. So when I put my burr back there, you can see it's got a spring. So when you do go to reattach your adjustment piece, you're going to need to just press a little bit in order to get contact with the shaft, and then you can just turn and keep turning until you meet your 0 point. But that spring-loaded action is actually a really big deal because, again, what that's going to do is it's going to allow me to adjust the grind really specifically, but it's still going to keep a little bit of pressure that's going to make it so that this should be about as accurate as possible. So that spring just helps to make sure that everything stays just the right amount of distance. And I found that that makes a big difference when I'm grinding, and I'll show that to you guys when we do some grinding in a few moments. We're going to talk in depth right now about the adjustment on the CrushGrind Brazil coffee grinder. Now, as I said, it's important that you give yourself a 0 point to work with. So here's how we found 0 in the studio. Essentially, we just turned the adjustment all the way counterclockwise until we couldn't turn it anymore. And this means that we can't turn the shaft. I can't turn it. I don't want to force it. Don't force this. You will hurt the ceramic burrs, and that would be really bad. But I can't turn it, and I can't turn this clockwise any further. So this is what I would call 0, and I'm just going to show this to you guys right here. That is our red 0 point right there. And this means that anytime that we take this apart, when we screw this back together, as long as we've put it back together properly, we turn our adjuster, we're going to hit that 0 mark. And this means that we're going to get the most accurate grind. Always start at 0 if you are going to be changing your grind type, because if you have a specific desired grind, you want to start at 0, and then you're going to turn the adjuster a number of times depending on the grind that you're looking for. Let's talk about how you're going to get to a specific grind. If you take a close look at the grinder itself, you're going to notice these hash marks underneath the gray adjuster right here. Each of these hash marks, each of these lines, is going to represent 0.02 millimeters, or 2/100ths of a millimeter. So we counted these, and 1 full turn is going to be 35 of those marks. Now, coffee grounds are going to be measured in microns, so in order to be able to know how many times we need to turn our adjuster, we need to convert microns to millimeters. All of this sounds really complex and mathematical, but don't worry, it's not actually that tough. We have this great size conversion and grind reference table from mpechicago.com/coffee. This is super useful. What this is going to tell us is how many microns we're going to be looking for in order to match certain grind types. And you can see here we've got French press, we have fine grind, we have espresso, and etc. So to simplify this for you guys, again, if we're talking about going to French press from 0, I would go ahead and turn 1 full turn, and this is going counterclockwise. Then I would turn another full turn, and then I'm going to add again just a little bit, about 3/10, and then I can start to adjust up or down a little bit depending on the grind that I'm looking for. This is for French press. You can play with that a little bit. You might find that roughly just 2 full turns is going to work well for you. You might need a little bit more, a little bit less, etc. Let's say that we were looking for fine grind or for drip. If we're looking for drip, we're looking at just spinning this once, essentially 360 degrees from 0. That's going to give us 35 clicks, as it were. And that is going to give us pretty much just about what we need for good fine grind. And we've measured this and ground many, many times over and compared this to other grinders, and we can tell you it's spot on. Now, your mileage may vary depending on the beans that you've got. Make sure you're using fresh beans. Make sure you're using really well roasted beans. All of this is stuff that we've talked about a lot here on FrenchPressCoffee.com. Use a quality bean and you're going to get a quality grind, especially with a grinder like this that is meant to be so infinitely adjustable. So finally, let's go ahead and get into some grinding. It's like I told you guys, this one was going to take a little while because there is a little math to be done here, but this is why we give you the shortcuts, so you can be able to do what you need to do and get a really good grind. I have roughly 1.6 to 1.9 millimeters that I can play with in order to get a good French press grind if I'm going by my reference table that I have right here. And so if I break that down, this is going to turn into and convert into about 2.5 turns of the adjuster. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this. So that's one full turn, 360. And do this again. There's 2. And as I said, I'm going to go for about 2.5. So that's easy because my halfway mark is just on the other side of my red hash. And again, this doesn't have to be perfect. You can play with this a little bit and your mileage may vary, but let's go ahead and try using this and see what kind of grind we get. So let's go ahead and use a quality bean, and the reason for that is that a bean that's been roasted really well is going to grind better when you come right down to it, and it's going to taste better, let's just face it. So let me show you a little something that I learned here while I was using the CrushGrind coffee grinder. I'm going to attach my receptacle in order to catch my grinds. I'm going to take my handle off. And something that I found is that honestly, if you were trying to just add beans just like this, like just pour them directly into the hopper, they're going to get everywhere. Because this is relatively small. It's not very big. It's not the largest opening. So what I like to do is take my hand, sort of cup it around. And this is just kind of a little tip here. Cup it around, and it makes it a lot easier to just add my beans. It's sort of, I'm the human funnel. That's what I am. I'm the human funnel when I do this. And this just allows me to get those beans in without making a big mess. Just something that hopefully helps you guys. I'm gonna put the lid now on top of the hopper, and your first inclination, you're gonna notice, is just gonna be to put the handle on and start grinding. And you could, but why would you do that? Because one of the really unique features of the CrushGrind Brazil coffee grinder is the base. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take, there's this sort of little nub right here. I'm going to match that up with the hole that's right here on the base. And so now this isn't going to go anywhere. It's locked into place. And now grinding is a lot easier. And you can adjust this whether you're dependent on your handedness, if you're left or you're right. I'm a righty, so I'm going to keep this on the right so that I can adjust it. And I will say that you need to press down and keep this in place. As good as those feet are, if you try to turn, you see, it's just not going to work. So you got to hold it in place. As good as the rubber feet are, this thing isn't locked down to my countertop, so you're going to need to hold it in place. But you don't need to press really hard. Just hold it in place and then just start turning to grind. And something I'm going to note is that at first when you start grinding, you're probably going to find that it takes a little bit of pressure, and as you get going, it becomes a lot easier. And don't be afraid to just turn and grind. It's looking pretty good. Okay. So we can keep going, obviously, but we've just about completely filled our hopper at this point. So, or rather, I'm sorry, our receptacle. So let's go ahead and just show you what we've got here. And again, you just take it apart, just kind of twist until it comes apart. And let's look at what we've got. It's really good, and it's really consistent, is one of the things that I have found, is that we get a really very, very consistent grind. There's a little bit of chunkiness, obviously, and that's going to happen. But compared to other grinders that I have used, but this is really good. And remember, I'm just playing around with this a little bit. I went a little bit above, honestly, what we kind of found just mathematically we would necessarily need to do in order to get a French press grind, because I was just kind of eyeballing it a little bit. So you could play with this afterwards now. You could take your grind adjuster and you could adjust up or down a little bit depending on what you want and the type of bean that you're using. Remember, different beans are probably going to grind a little bit differently. I've seen this. depending on how they were roasted, how dark it is, how light it is, the amount of moisture that might be left in the bean, a lot of different things that affect that. That can change your grind. But this is pretty impressive. I gotta say, like, it's really impressive, especially for a hand cranked burr grinder. This is a really good grind. And one of the things that I want to mention is that what CrushGrind says is that their grinder is able to be about 2 to 5 times more efficient than the average comparable grinder. And so we are going to have a video where we're going to compare the CrushGrind Brazil grinder versus the Hario grinder, which we have talked about before. If you want to see the real nuts and bolts when we get down to grind types, that's what you're going to want to check out, because there is a big difference to be found here. We did side by side. There's a big difference. Check out the video. This is going to show you the information that you need. Cleaning, maintenance, and durability. We always talk about those here on FrenchPressCoffee.com. Let's start actually with the latter, durability. Now, we haven't been able to have this in the studio for a superb amount of time, so we can't tell you exactly how durable it is, but I can tell you that 20 plus years of experience on Ideas Denmark's side, I think is going to contribute to a pretty durable product. It doesn't feel to me like it's going to break or anything like that. Treat it nice and it should be fine. So that's going to come down to maintenance and cleaning. Now, as for cleaning, pretty straightforward to clean this. What Ideas Denmark suggests is that when cleaning, you take it apart, take the burrs out, and then clean them carefully, and then let them dry for 24 hours. The reason for that is that because the burrs are ceramic, some of that moisture can get into those burrs, and you want to give that time to dry out. So don't force it, and when you decide to clean it, make sure that you're giving yourself some time to let it dry, at least overnight and then some extra time. So just make sure you're giving yourself a little bit of time. And as for maintenance, that's going to be the thing that's going to be important. Clean it every once in a while, keep it nice and clean. Those oils are going to build up, and because these are ceramic burrs, they should have a nice long lifespan, but keep them clean and take care of them. And remember, do not try and turn that grinder if you're at the 0 mark. If you do that, you're gonna hurt those burrs. You could very well break them or something along those lines. So don't do that. Beyond that, maintenance is not a whole lot more. Keep it clean and you should be fine. Again, I have to say this, it feels super solid. Grinding with it is very simple, and that to me points to this being a really durable product in the long run. And finally, the cost, which I know you guys always want to know. You're looking at $79.99. That's really good. I have to say, for the quality of this, $79.99 is really super impressive. And you can get this in black right now at the making of this video. That's the color that is available. If we're going to talk about my bottom line on the CrushGrind Brazil coffee grinder, as I say, great price, easy to use once you get to know the adjustment. And that's the biggest thing that I think could be frustrating for most folks, is the adjustment of the burr grinder. Once you know that, it's really very simple and easy to use. I'm all about the base in this case. I am all about the base and the fact that it's not going to move anywhere, and it's going to make grinding really, really easy for me. I love the design. Maybe a little bit of downside to some folks is the fact that it's single serve. Really, when you break it down, it's kind of mostly single serve because this isn't a huge grinder. But it's not a big deal because it is going to let you grind some really great coffee. The only other thing that I would say is something to keep in mind that I just was not crazy about is the fact that this handle doesn't lock on and it keeps falling off no matter what I do. So learn from my mistake. And the third thing that you want to keep in mind is that you kind of have to relearn that you need to use this base, because this is a pretty unique thing when it comes to hand crank burr grinders, and I've done this too. I'll put the handle on after filling up the hopper and I just want to start grinding and I go, wait a minute, hold on. Make it easier on yourself. Put this onto the base and then start grinding. So if you relearn that, I think you're going to be absolutely fine. But those few little points are very, very small compared to the really great things that I found with this grinder. And the big plus is because you have to use the base, you're going to be more efficient. You're going to grind more quickly. And because you have those wings inside of the bean hopper, they're going to force the beans down and into the burrs. It's going to make it a lot easier to grind. I just found that compared to other hand crank grinders, I was able to turn and grind some coffee really quickly and then be able to brew that, as compared to other ones where I had to turn and it took a really, really long time. So there you have it, everyone. That is a look at the CrushGrind Brazil coffee grinder from Ideas, Denmark. As I said, this was going to be a long one, so I do very much appreciate you guys sticking around with us here at FrenchPressCoffee.com. If you have questions, comments, looking for other answers, if we missed anything, or if you just want to talk about this grinder, make sure to find us on your favorite social media network, and most especially, find this grinder at FrenchPressCoffee.com. As always, everyone, I'm Brian with FrenchPressCoffee.com. Thank you for tuning in, and until next time, happy brewing to you.
So did you like that video? If so, go ahead and give us a like, maybe subscribe to our channel, and if you do, I'll give you a great coffee quote. Come on, subscribe. All right, awesome, thank you so much. And now for the coffee quote. Remember that coffee is like a hug in a mug.